This abandoned airport is in Cyprus. It's in the middle of a no-man's land that divides this Mediterranean island. Cyprus has been torn by an ethnic conflict between two communities for decades. But its location right between Europe and the Middle East is now pulling it back into the global spotlight. The Cyprus problem is a roadblock between Turkey and the EU, just as Europe is scrambling for reliable security partners. And Cyprus is playing a growing part in Middle East rivalries too. So are old fault lines in Cyprus fueling a new battle for regional influence? In Europe, Cyprus is mostly known as a tourist destination. But to others around the world, it can seem really far off.
What? Cyprus? I don't even know where that is. Is Cyprus even on that risk board? I don't even think it's around there.
Don't worry, we got you. Go to the Mediterranean Sea, between Europe and Africa. Then to its eastern corner, right off the coast of Asia. Here it is, between the three continents, the island of Cyprus. More than 1.3 million people live here. Roughly 2/3 of them live in the south. Most of them are Greek Cypriots, who are predominantly Orthodox Christians. And about 1/3 of the population lives in the north, mostly Muslims. Most are Turkish Cypriots and Turkish settlers. As you can see, there is a lot going on in this map. Let's take a look at who is in control where in Cyprus. First, the Bufferzone, dividing the whole island, including the capital city of Nicosia. This space is administered by the United Nations and monitored by its peacekeepers. It's mostly abandoned, just like the airport. As with any fight, Greek and Turkish Cypriots have very different stories for what went wrong here. But everyone kind of agrees to call this situation the Cyprus problem. So here it is. The territories in the south, populated by the Greek Cypriot community, are controlled by the Republic of Cyprus. Internationally, it's regarded as the only legitimate government for the whole island. Just look at their flag, proudly displaying the entire island, even though they don't control the northern part. Because in the north, the Turkish Cypriot community declared their own state, the so-called Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. It's only recognized by Turkey. People often call it Northern Cyprus for short. To complete the puzzle, there are these two UK sovereign military bases, a legacy from the island's British colonial past. And if that wasn't tricky enough, let's add geopolitics to this mix. Greek Cypriots are supported by Greece, and Turkish Cypriots are supported by Turkey. Both are NATO members, but have often been at odds with each other. As we mentioned, Turkey is the only country that recognizes the so-called Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. They use the same currency, the Turkish lira, and even have the same national anthem. But most importantly, Turkey has some 30 to 40,000 soldiers here. Their presence is one of the most contentious issues in the Cyprus problem.
The Turkish Cypriots are structurally dependent on Turkey, and there's no two ways about that. We do use this discourse of the motherland and the babyland, quite literally.
Erol Kaymak is a Turkish Cypriot professor of international relations.
Most Turkish Cypriots are comfortable with this hybridity because Turkey is essential to Turkish Cypriot vitality, its economy, its security, and Greek Cypriots are adversarial.
Greek Cypriots are close to Greece. They also share the same currency, the euro, and the national anthem. And Greece has about 1,000 soldiers there.
People maintain both identities. They maintain a Greek identity, use of culture, the language.
Neophytos Loizides is a Greek Cypriot professor in international conflict analysis.
But also people feel that they're very Cypriot. So these different identities are overlapped.
Ethnic and cultural identities were crucial in the history of this conflict. We will get into that in detail later. Right now, let's look at the strategic reality today. The Republic of Cyprus is a member of the European Union, but Turkey isn't. The EU sees all of Cyprus as a member and they don't recognize Northern Cyprus. Turkey is a member of the NATO military alliance and the Republic of Cyprus isn't. It would like to join NATO, but Turkey is blocking that. And Turkish efforts to work closer with the EU have been blocked by the Republic of Cyprus. Because of the Cyprus problem, NATO and the EU can't even formally share classified information.
EU coordination with NATO becomes more difficult. And at some point, there might be questions of who do we choose to work with.
This structural blockade is a big problem for Europe, and it is getting bigger, especially now that the US is seen as unreliable.
There is this increasing pressure to move forward with a Europeanized security architecture, and yet, because of the Cyprus dispute, we don't move forward.
And there are more issues. The territorial dispute on the island has extended to the sea surrounding it. It's about maritime borders. Turkey follows the so-called Blue Homeland Doctrine. It's pushing expansive maritime claims, and Cyprus is right in the middle of it. This has become more important since natural gas was found under the seabed here. And the Republic of Cyprus is getting closer to Israel, which Turkey sees as a regional rival. The two countries are working together with Greece on energy projects, including a major underwater power cable to link their electricity grids. And now there are growing military ties. The Republic of Cyprus has been buying Israeli weapons, and their militaries are training together. Together with Greece, they've also announced a military partnership. And Turkey and Turkish Cypriots are not amused.
When we have a common security threat, or it's perceived that way, then you see that there is no real difference between the perspectives of Turkish Cypriots and that of Ankara on this issue.
This could go both ways. It could create a situation where we enter another cycle of escalation among players in the region who makes the Cyprus problem look unresolvable.
So Cyprus is becoming part of a broader regional rivalry because of its division and location. And those two UK bases we mentioned earlier are also part of this complicated situation. By the way, they are really important for UK intelligence gathering. One of them was hit by a drone after the US and Israel attacked Iran. It was reportedly launched from Lebanon, likely by Hezbollah, Iran's ally. The drone hit a hangar housing American U-2 spy planes, as reported by the British newspaper The Sun. It only caused minor damage, but had a big impact. Now opposition to the bases is growing in the Republic of Cyprus, and so are calls for the UK to leave.
The feeling is that these bases are a remnant of colonial times, but also there are no guarantees for Cypriot security.
The UK insists the bases have been agreed on in the past. So it's history again. Let's take a look at what makes the Cyprus problem so complicated. You know by now that the Turkish Cypriot community is in the north and the Greek Cypriot community is in the south. But in the past they actually used to live all over the island and often right next to each other. Why did that change so radically? Cyprus was long ruled by the Ottoman Empire, but it was handed over to the UK in the late 19th century. By the 1950s, nationalist movements were growing on the island. Greek Cypriots wanted to unify with Greece and fought against the British. Turkish Cypriots opposed unification with Greece. With tensions rising on the island, the UK, Turkey and Greece started negotiating. They agreed on independence for Cyprus, but under very specific conditions. The president had to be Greek Cypriot and the vice president a Turkish Cypriot. Seats in parliament were allocated on a 70-30 ratio. And Cyprus could not unify with any other nation, not with Greece and not with Turkey. Greece, Turkey and the UK became guarantor powers, meaning should Cypriot independence be in danger, they had the right to intervene militarily. Plus, the UK retained those two sovereign bases on the island. Here you can see the first president of Cyprus, Archbishop Makarios, agreeing on their boundaries with British military officers. And yeah, Makarios was an Orthodox priest. The Republic of Cyprus became independent in 1960, but the power-sharing system was rocky from the start.
It's clear that this was a match that was not made in heaven. Neither the Turkish Cypriot side, but in particular the Greek Cypriot side, were reconciled with the Republic of Cyprus.
Relations between the communities deteriorated as ethnic violence gripped the island.
Scores of Cypriots were murdered by Greek and Turkish extremists. Since independence in 1960, there has been an uneasy peace. Now the island verges on full-scale war.
Turkish Cypriots fled to enclaves for safety.
There was no peacekeeping to prevent those incidents from happening. And the motherlands support militias on both sides.
The first United Nations peacekeepers arrived on the island in 1964, and they've been there ever since. The power-sharing system collapsed and Turkish Cypriots were out of the government. Greek Cypriots stayed in charge alone. But some hardliners still wanted unification with Greece, and the military junta in Athens backed a coup overthrowing the Cypriot government. That's when Turkey invaded. They said they were defending the independence of the Republic of Cyprus, like they agreed to do in the deal in 1960. The Turkish army occupied the northern part of the island. This is when the Republic of Cyprus lost control over it. Since then, the two communities got completely separated from each other. The Turkish Cypriot community still largely sees the invasion as a liberation. For Greek Cypriots, it's Turkish aggression. Hundreds of thousands had to flee from their homes and leave everything behind. Greek Cypriots fled from the north, and Turkish Cypriots fled from the south. In 1983, the so-called Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus was proclaimed in the north. Settlers from mainland Turkey kept moving to the island. Crossing the ceasefire line was impossible.
I was born in 1974, a few months after the war. We can see the bullets in the house, we can see the bullets in the church, but we wouldn't experience the Turkish Cypriot community. We didn't have any contact.
This changed only in the early 2000s when it seemed like the Cyprus problem could be solved. Checkpoints were opened, allowing people to visit the other side for the first time in decades. And the UN put forward the so-called Annan Plan, named after the Secretary General at the time. Anyway, the plan was to reunify the island as a federation with a new power-sharing system. Recep Tayyip Erdogan, back then Turkey's newly elected Prime Minister, endorsed it, hoping that it would pave the way for Turkey to join the EU. In a referendum, Turkish Cypriots approved the plan. But Greek Cypriots overwhelmingly rejected it. Many of them criticized what they saw as too many concessions, especially allowing Turkish troops to stay on the island. For those in the north, the rejection by the Greek Cypriots still cuts deep.
That generation that had voted yes to the Annan Plan are now increasingly jaded for the experience. And so I think that once you're in that mindset, it's difficult for you to make a leap of faith in the same way as you did before.
Other efforts failed as well. So Turkey changed tack, and Erdogan doubled down on a two-state solution. Turkey has increased investments in northern Cyprus, consolidating its influence there. For the last decade, there has been almost no progress. But now things could be changing. In the north, Turkish Cypriots elected a pro-unification politician as their president. Leaders from both sides of the divided island have been meeting again, and the UN is looking at restarting talks, despite past failures.
This can be interpreted in two different ways. We come close many times and we haven't managed it, therefore it's impossible. But there's also another reading that given how close we are, and given that sides have agreed on almost everything, we shouldn't waste the opportunity.
Polls suggest a majority on both sides could support or at least tolerate uniting the island. But very few people expect a real breakthrough anytime soon.
I'd like to keep hoping. I would love to see the two parts of Cyprus connected again, united again.
In all practicality, personally, I don't know how possible that is. Because Turkey has invaded, they occupied our country illegally.
It's a very complicated situation for a Turkish Cypriot because, yeah, we don't want Turkish army either, but if we're going to have Cyprus Republic pairing up with Israel, and then, okay, Turkish extra military presence is justified.
People, the public, love each other. But unfortunately, both sides of Cyprus suffer because of politicians. And unfortunately, external forces are fueling this.
So could outside powers finally pull in the same direction? There are few signs of that. And the attack on the British base in Cyprus highlights the tensions. To reassure the Republic of Cyprus, Greece deployed F-16 fighter jets, and other European states followed with their warships. And the US is increasingly using the Republic of Cyprus as a logistics hub for its military. And all that is putting Turkey on edge.
So if you look at it in the big picture, increasingly we see the Western alliance encroaching on the Cyprus issue and potentially antagonizing Turkey.
Turkey responded by deploying its own F-16s and air defense systems to northern Cyprus. And on the diplomatic level, things are still not moving. The EU says progress on Cyprus is a condition for Turkey to deepen ties.
One immediate step would be the visa liberalization if there is a progress on the Cyprus issue, a defense integration of Turkey.
But Turkey's relationship with the EU has already cooled off. And with European security set for more changes, Turkey with its big army feels that it has the leverage now.
A lot rides on whether European security architecture includes or excludes Turkey, because Turkey is no longer a vassal state of the United States and NATO. This is a multipolar moment, and that means that middle powers like Turkey have a lot more options. So to be empathetic to Turkey, what does it gain from resolving the Cyprus problem?
Giving Turkey what it wants would be a hard sell in the Republic of Cyprus, which still sees Turkey as an occupying power. The old conflict line might be easier to cross now for Greek and Turkish Cypriots. But as we've seen, regional geopolitics have made the Cyprus problem even more complicated.
So the current climate is not in favor of peace, right? We didn't see examples of successful peace agreements recently. So in a way, it's less likely because of the climate, but it's an exceptional moment to aim for something that could serve your own interests.
I don't really think that we can maintain a frozen conflict for much longer. I think the status quo isn't stable at all. You can see the problems are building up, and they're more vital than they used to be.
With Europe still trying to ensure its own security, finding a solution to the Cyprus problem is suddenly back on the continent's agenda.